but I'll just say that it's probably the better handled colorism episode that any of these shows have even attempted.
Hello everyone, this is Alex.
And this is Em.
Welcome to the latest episode of The Good, the Bad, the Basic. This is the podcast for TV lovers, movie buffs, and binge watchers of all ages. On this podcast, we'll be discussing what we love, what we hate, and what was just a bit problematic about the TV and movies that we're addicted to, and do a bit of rewriting where necessary.
For much more exclusive content, become a show producer on Patreon and get access to after the episode bonuses, curated playlists, movie reviews, music video retrospectives, and so much more. Join the GBB family at patreon.com/goodbadbasic.
Today we'll be discussing Starz hit sitcom Survivor's Remorse.
Survivor's Remorse tells the story of a young basketball player who must struggle with the weight of family obligations and professional expectations after he signs a multi-million-dollar contract with an NBA team in Atlanta. We follow the show's protagonist, Cam Calloway, as he tries to navigate being kind and helpful without becoming a pushover and a human ATM.
Survivor's remorse manifests when a person feels guilt over being the sole survivor of a traumatic or life-threatening situation. In this series, we see a much more relatable version of the term applied when dealing with the various trauma that cyclical poverty can inflict upon families, and the way that stark socioeconomic disparities can affect families and relationships.
Black family sitcoms are a television institution, so what makes Survivor's Remorse stand out among the pack?
Stay tuned.
All right, everyone. So we've gone over the premise of Survivor's Remorse. Let's get into some details about the show. The show is labeled as a sitcom, sports sitcom, family sitcom, although it honestly, for those who've watched the show or are thinking about watching the show, it is much more of a comedic drama than a sitcom, and we'll get into that as we discuss the seasons. The creator of Survivor's Remorse is Mike O'Malley. The series aired from October 4th, 2014 to October 15th, 2017, and lasted 4 seasons and a total of 36 episodes. The series stars Jesse T. Usher as Cam Calloway, Ronreiko Lee as Reggie Vaughn, Cam's cousin, Erica Ash as Mary Charles Calloway, aka M. Chuck, who is Cam's half-sister, Tiana Paris as Missy Vaughn, Reggie's wife, Tachina Arnold as Cassie Calloway, Cam's mother, Megan Tandy as Allison Pierce, Cam's girlfriend, Robert Wu as Dachin Bao, Cassie's boyfriend, Mike Epps as Uncle Julius, and Chris Bauer as Jim Flaherty. So this is our core cast of characters that we're going to be seeing the most of seasons 1 through 4. I want to say personally, before I even say anything else, this show is absolutely my favorite show with the exception of Malcolm in the Middle, which is a true sitcom. This is my favorite show that we have reviewed thus far. So Alex, why don't you jump in with your thoughts on season 1?
Well, right. Well, before we get into season 1, just some stuff. Survivor's Remorse was one of LeBron James's first outings as a producer. This Survivor's Remorse is produced by his production company. And this was sort of his first, foray into the sort of television game. It's created, the creator and the producer is Mike O'Malley, which is Kurt Hummel's dad on Glee, which is also cool. And Survivor's Remorse also boasts sort of Cord Jefferson from Gawker, who wrote for the series. If you're familiar with his like sort of writing, he was like popular. And also this was one of Tracy Oliver's first jobs after Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl. So Survivor's Remorse is really cool in that you sort of have all this emerging talent and these people really you sort of see like the burgeoning work of like a bunch of your faves, and now I think people who are like, you know, really up in the world and movers and shakers. Like Tracy Oliver is obviously like a huge deal now. She's lots of stuff in development. And I think Cord Jefferson is now writing for Watchmen on HBO. He's that's his job. So which is a big critically acclaimed series, and a lot of people really, really like it. So seeing that, and so watching Survivor's Remorse and being able to watch like and see sort of like their early work is pretty cool.
Right. And Tracy Oliver went on to watch Girls Trip, for those who have seen that movie. So obviously she knows what she's doing. When I got into season 1 of this show, I was super duper impressed with the writing. The premise I thought was really interesting. And I said this to Alex when we were having a private conversation, when I mentioned that this show is so perfect based on the premise alone, because a lot of people will use the excuse of, well, this is not relatable for Black people, to not cast Black characters in a series. But Survivor's Remorse and the story of Cam Calloway, who literally went from rags to riches and brought his family with him based off the strength of his athletic prowess and getting a college scholarship and then later an NBA contract. This is actually the story of many, many Black families. There are many professional athletes who have this same story, whether they be in the NBA or the NFL or what have you. So I was very impressed with that. And then as soon as I got into the writing, by episode 2, I couldn't stop watching the show. It was that good.
Yeah, the show is really good. Sometimes I think the show can be a bit talky in the way, and when I say talky, like, I mean exactly that. I think it's just really talky, but that's not necessarily a knock on it. Other shows that Survivor's Remorse like reminds me of in terms of like the talkiness of it is like Dear White People. Dear White People is also like a really talky show. It's fine. I don't mind it. I think it's fine for what it is. I definitely don't like prefer talky shows, but this is good. This is fine.
So let's just jump into some of the things that happen in season 1. Obviously, in season 1, we meet our protagonist, Cam. We meet Reggie, who is not just his cousin, but his manager. And for me, like, I was already like walking on eggshells when I heard that his cousin was his manager, because a lot of times that shit does not pan out so well, having your family members be your employees. But very quickly, I realized that Reggie is really a commendable person in so many more ways than one. Reggie really has Cam's back. Reggie wants to be a great businessman and eventual entrepreneur, and he's using being his cousin's manager as a springboard for his own personal endeavors and aspirations. But he's not one to give Cam intentionally bad advice or lead him astray, or, let Cam leave opportunities on the table or anything like that. As you watch Cam and Reggie's dynamic, I thought that was really great, because Cam can be Reggie's heart, and Reggie is definitely, in many instances, Cam's brain, which is not to say Cam is stupid or that Reggie is heartless, but Reggie is a businessman first, and Cam is a do-gooder first, and they really balance each other out, which is a really great relationship to watch.
We learned through like the course of the series that they're cousins, but they're those cousins that grew up together and were friends from childhood. So, and we're always in each other's lives. So they're effectively almost in a sense brothers, which is interesting, which is a cool dynamic. And it's great to watch between them.
I really liked watching that as well, because I feel like this is very common in Black communities, cousins that are more like siblings. So Reggie's mother was the other sister of Julius and Cassie, who passed many, many, many years ago. And so even the way Cassie treats Reggie as well is like she treats her children, Cam and M. Chuck. Cam's sister is a few years older than him, and she's a really great addition to the show as well. She's hilarious. The character is hilarious, and the actress who plays her, Erica Ash, has great comedic timing. They also explore how the Black community deals with gay and lesbian people through the Mary Charles character because she is a lesbian. So I thought that was a really great springboard, like not just bring in a supporting character who's gay or lesbian and then talk about it for one episode and be done with it. It becomes a sort of recurring issue through the Mary Charles character, which I thought was really, really well handled. Cam's mother, played by Tachana Arnold, is also a really great character. And she plays the character so well because Cassie's hilarious when she needs to be, but there are so many beautiful episodes and great scenes where Cassie is more serious that are like just punch you in the chest in the very best possible way.
Yeah, I mean, Tashina Arnold is an actress, like capital ACTRESS. She's a heavy hitter. She's been in the game for an extremely long time. She is so good. So it's great to see her in this. I'm delighted anytime I see her on my screen. You guys, Tashina Arnold, if you don't know a bit about her career, that's Everybody Hates Chris, Martin, any Black comedic film that you've like ever watched. I don't know. So then the sort of last person to round out this family is Uncle Julius, played by, Mike Epps. Mike Epps, also somebody who's been in the game for like a really long time. And I like Uncle Julius. He's exactly what his name sounds like. He's like your inappropriate uncle.
Not inappropriate in the sexual context. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, not inappropriate in that way, but just inappropriate in all the other ways.
I love the Uncle Julius character. He was my favorite character for a minute on that show. But yeah, he has this really crazy relationship with his sister Cassie. They're obviously siblings, but they interact more like best friends. And he has a really great relationship with, his nieces, Reggie and Cam, and his nephew, M. Chuck. He definitely doesn't play the role of a quote unquote father figure, but more like an adult friend, which is really cool to watch. I thought this character was just a really great addition to the family and added a lot of levity to a lot of the situations in the first two seasons. There is an episode, and I thought this episode was funny because the actor who guest stars on the show, I didn't look up his name, but he is now a principal character on The Chi. He plays a kid with a serious brain disorder who basically wakes up from a coma and ends up spending the day with Cam and his family. And he's like 14, 15 years old. And he's like, listen, I'm not really trying to learn how to shoot free throws. I might die any day now. I just want to see a woman naked. And this episode is like deeply inappropriate, but also hilarious at the same time, which is really hard to do. So from a writing perspective, I was like, okay, like I'm gonna give y'all like, a gold star for that one. This was episode 3. And I want to say episode 6 was probably one of the more serious episodes of season 1, where Cam's friend from high school, who is an ex-con who's also bipolar, approaches him for a tryout for a D-list team. And then when Cam goes to Reggie to set it up, and Reggie does, because Reggie's a good manager and a good friend, this guy bails. Like he has an opportunity right in his face and he bails. And I think if we're being honest, that's a lot of people's stories. They say they want something, but then when they get the opportunity to have that thing, they're really not ready for it. That wasn't a sad episode to see because this person was literally looking a gift horse in the mouth. But sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles. I think these are some of the standout episodes for me for season 1. This and episode 6, when Reggie's ex comes back and we realize that his ex-girlfriend cheated on him with Cam. And that the fact that he's such a good friend and such a good manager to Cam, like we thought Reggie was a good person before, but now we realize he's a great person.
Right.
Oh, okay. And shout out to that actress who plays Adina. She's now on Black Lightning as Black Lightning's eldest daughter.
What I like about it is like when it happens, it's sort of like everybody, talks about, oh no, like it's Adina. Yeah, the way that Reggie sort of has like this history with her and that he's always just taken in by her. Like she's just this person he can't say no to or can't really help himself getting involved with no matter what. He always sort of goes back to her. And by this time, like Reggie's married to Missy and everybody's sort of like nervous when they hear that she's in town. There's like a whole thing about meeting at a diner. But what I love about it, one of the things I really, really love about it is that I think Reggie goes and he like drives by the diner, but he never actually goes in. It underscores this thing that people say and like that we say and that, or that there's absolutely nothing that can break a relationship that is already strong. I like it for that reason.
Reggie and Missy's relationship is actually one of like definitely top 2, if not number 1 aspect of the show that I love the most. Reggie is in love, and it's not just like honeymoon phase type of love. They've been married for a few years when the show opens. And what I love about Missy and Reggie's relationship, well, there's a few things. They clearly love each other a lot. They clearly care about each other a lot. They support each other's dreams. Even when they're fighting, they never say things to each other that one might regret later. Like even when they're raising their voices, they never talk down to or degrade each other. And they also can't keep their hands off each other. So it's not just a matter of strong feelings. They have a really strong passion and sexual chemistry with each other. That's really great and refreshing to watch. We do see that Reggie, has this thing with Adina, but it's not what his family thinks anymore. It's not this, I'm so in love with her, I can't think straight anymore. What Reggie's really dealing with is, this unresolved betrayal and hurt that he felt when she cheated, that the series lets you believe like it's something he's still upset about, but he's no longer in love with Adina. He's in love with his wife, and that is like laid on the table. Like there's no ambiguity about it. Missy is where his focus is. So I thought that was really, really great.
Towards so for the most part, season 1 is like just sort of getting us introduced to this family, and the show talks about a lot of stuff. There was an episode where they sort of talk about Cam being like spanked when he was younger and the sort of politics of that, the ethics of it, but then also having this thing play out in a really public way.
I thought that was handled well. So in other shows, what I loved about Survivor's Remorse, and this is throughout, in other shows, they will show you like a character, learning and growing and admitting that they were in the wrong. This happens sometimes on Survivor's Remorse. It doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes what happens is people will just pretend to have learned and grown and give fake apologies to save face, which I thought was a very realistic showing, even if it's not what we would have wanted. Cam's mom gets called out for spanking him when he was a kid, and she knows what she has to do, but her opinion doesn't change. I would have liked it if her opinion hasn't changed, because personally, I'm not a proponent of spanking either. But I thought that this was great in showcasing how a lot of times celebrities and their entourage will just say whatever they have to say to their viewing public so that they can go on with their lives. And this isn't even the last time that we'll deal with something like this on the show, someone giving an apology that they don't actually really feel. Season 1, I thought, was really, really well done. We meet the Bao Chen Dao character, who will become a love interest for Cassie at the end of season 1, when Cam, and Reggie go into business together. So, we're bringing in this new character at the end of season 1, which I thought was also really good placement. So season 1 was really good for me. What did you think of season 1, Alex? Good, bad, or basic?
It's good. It's a solid good. Yeah, I think the show has a handle on like what it wants to do. I think like the characters are like very clear. It's good.
So let's jump into season 2. Season 2 is 10 episodes, and this will be the episode order for seasons 2 through 4, 10 episodes long. I am impressed by how much they can do with these brief episode orders. And shows like this and Instant Star, which will be reviewed later, have kind of spoiled me. I don't even think I have the stamina for 22 episodes a season anymore. I really don't. But yeah, let's jump into season 2.
Yeah, so season 2 is first season they're living like in a really huge sort of penthouse apartment, but by season 2 they've upgraded to a really huge just home, like a mansion, suburbs of Atlanta. How that comes about is funny within and of itself, that episode. They think that they try to like hustle it. They try to hustle the price down to be like, because the owner is like a white woman, and they try to hustle the price down and try to frame it as like, oh, it's like reparations, girl. Like, that's why you should give us this house for cheap. And she then busts out her portrait of like, I guess her ancestor, who is just like this light-skinned black guy. So then they're like, oh, shit. But they basically find them living in this, everybody's living in this house, and except for Reggie and Missy, because please, no. Particularly when we get a bit more into Missy, like, please, never in her whole life.
Yeah. I want to touch on something you just mentioned about Reggie and Missy. They never lived with the family. Since they've been in Atlanta, they've had their own space, which I really, really loved. Too many of these shows be trying to have all the family members under one roof so that they can handle the storyline better. But this show doesn't drop the ball. We are just as integrated with the family that lives in Cam's home as we are with Reggie and Missy's home, which I thought was nice. Like, y'all grown, you're married, you need to be in your own house.
Right, yeah. And when we see Missy's background, or when we get a bit more into Missy's background, which we do in season 1, because there's an episode in season 1 where Reggie's gone to this country club, and there are all these like really unspoken, he's like applying for membership, and there are all these unspoken rules to like wealth and having it and being in certain circles. And because Missy comes from wealth, she helps him navigate how to do that. Missy comes from wealth, so she would not be living with everybody under one roof. She doesn't know that life.
I love the Missy character, and I think that a character like Missy, handled by the wrong writers or the wrong team, could have gone so left so fast. But the show really makes Missy, for me personally anyway, like a really lovable, really likable character. Missy does come from wealth. Her parents are wealthy. And I think a lot of times when like people in the Black community, particularly Black men, say things like, you need to build with your man, you need to hold him down while he's getting himself together. Like, they're talking about men with no ambition and no goals, and who aren't really making any moves. But for me, Missy is like the polar opposite of that. She is with Reggie, even though Reggie doesn't come from money, but she sees what the audience quickly sees. Reggie's a go-getter. Reggie's ambitious. Reggie is smart. Reggie has good instincts. So it's not exactly a chore to be with him because she's not out here financially supporting Reggie. She is offering emotional support and her own insight from having grown up wealthy to help him. But this is not a situation where she is, treating a grown man like he's a child. Reggie is doing for himself. And I really like seeing that. I like seeing their relationship and how they kind of bounce ideas off each other. They have a really great partnership, you guys. Emphasis on partnership.
Absolutely. And you're right. I think the Missy character in different hands would probably be disastrous. Missy's played by the incomparable Teyonah Parris, who I feel like I've been personally on like a one-woman campaign for Teyonah Parris for several years now. But in terms of her acting talent, she just has a lot of range. I think she's extremely talented. But she's played by Teyonah Parris, and Teyonah Parris really, I think, strikes, along with the writers, strike a really excellent chord with Missy. Missy is what I imagine. I think Missy is what like white people think they're writing, like when they write Black women, but they're not. Like, does that make any sort of sense?
Yes, I can absolutely see that. Like when they're writing wealthy Black women in particular, but like it's literally just wealth in Blackface. It isn't wealth with Black experiences, and I think that's what makes Missy different.
She's very like lovable, and she's not whimsical because she's very thoughtful, but she does have her own sort of prejudices and biases that like hurt her, which we see in season 2. Season 2, Reggie will manage, for a small time, Reggie goes to manage this other athlete who is not a basketball player, is a football player, named Jupiter, because Jupiter's manager is a mess. Like a whole like mess. There's this test. There's like this IQ test that he has to take because the NFL is racist. Missy assumes that she's just gonna do amazing on it, or that she'll be like way smarter than him, and she's not. She gets humbled, and for a minute it throws her sense of self into whack. It humbles her versus like annihilating her or like punishing her, which I feel is always what happens on like white shows with white writers. Like they think that they'll be humbling a Black female character, but they don't humble. They usually punish.
Right. The IQ test episode was super funny. I have to go on record though to say for the audience, like IQ test doesn't actually measure your intelligence, it just measures your intellectual potential. And this is why we see a character like Jupiter who has like this super high IQ, but like is really like not smart, and Missy has a much lower IQ than him, but is like really, really intelligent. And we can talk about their environments and how she had parents who pushed her academically and he did not. But yeah, you don't have to have the highest IQ to have a good life and to be book learned. I just want to put that out there.
Right, which is what essentially the show says. In that episode sort of highlights, which is cool. Yeah, so let's talk about this Chen character for a minute. The Chen character is where I think the show makes its sort of biggest misstep. It's difficult, in a sense, because Chen is and will go on to be throughout the run of this series. Like, he is a full character. He has a lot of thoughts. Thinks for himself. He has his own sort of foibles. Chen he's a Chinese billionaire who owns like a sports sneaker company, and he offers Cam a huge like sort of deal. The episode within and of itself is great. It's essentially between like Chen's company and Nike in terms of like who Cam is going to sign with, and Cam ultimately signs with Chen's company because it's a better deal. Chen then sort of ends up falling for Cam's mother, Cassie, and they embark on a relationship that's really wonderful. But the Chen character himself has problems. He has this sort of like Breakfast at Tiffany's stereotypical like accent that's really rough. And my thing is, personally, is that like accents within and of themselves are not bad. People have accents. My mom, who's from a different country, has an accent, but it's all about how they're used, how they're deployed, and like if they make sense for the character. Chen will learn to find out throughout the run of the series is wealthy, and he was born wealthy. His parents are very wealthy. He comes from old Chinese money. I think in the poker episode, he will remark that he went to boarding school in Switzerland. So it doesn't make sense that he has this like affected accent. And then even just from personal experience, I know lots of like, particularly like the rich Chinese immigrants who have every resource available to them, they speak perfect English. It's really hard to tell like that they're not from the US proper, if not some other English speaking country. So it is uncomfortable, but the Chen character is like a well-written character. It's a deep character. It's just that accent that bugs. And in the interest of keeping that same energy, like just because this is a story about a Black family and lots of Black writers worked on this, doesn't mean like we stop thinking about, well, is this something that's like fair and all that stuff. But the relationship between Chen and Cassie is really great.
Right. Chen's accent is troublesome for the reason that Alex stated. I do think that when he was brought in this episode where, Cam signs a contract, which is for $40 million and a 6% stake in his company. This is the last episode of season 1. I do think when that episode aired and that character was presented, his accent was supposed to be for comedic relief, which is racist. There's no way of getting around that. But luckily, when we come into season 2 with the Chen character, he is fully actualized as like a whole person. And Chen's actually a really good person. And Chen and Cassie's relationship is a relationship that you really didn't see coming, but it feels so organic. And I think that's a testament to the writing and the acting on the show. I think one of my favorite scenes with Cassie and Chen early on is, I believe this was in episode 8 or 9, where they're at a function and, she asks for chicken satay and he says, "I will get you a chicken satay factory." And I was like, you know what, girl, hold on to that one. That's a keeper. But his courtship of Cassie is really cool and really fun. And their relationship is really cool and really fun. The show actually handles the racial and cultural differences between them very well. It doesn't ignore them. It doesn't ignore the fact that the rest of the world has an opinion about them, but they are very much themselves with each other. You never feel like either one is editing their personality in order to be liked more by their partner, which I thought was really, really great.
Chen and Cassie are fun. Chen is just also fun. Chen's personality is like too rich to care, basically. Which is great. Which is great. Like everything is just, I'm just too rich to care. Chen is great. Chen has a lot of good advice. Chen is like very smart. Chen, like I said, particularly like in the poker episode. So there's an episode where Reggie is invited to a poker game by Jimmy Flaherty, which is the team owner, and a bunch of other really high rollers and prestigious businessmen are going to be there. And essentially, Chen and Missy nail it for what it is, which is that like it's an audition. It's an invitation to audition to be in these big circles, and how you navigate this poker game and how you play. And if you lose, all of that is going to determine whether you're here to stay, which is real and great and fascinating. You get the sense that Chen genuinely cares about Cam and Cassie's family, because I think Chen even offers to go to support Reggie.
Right. Yeah. Chen actually is like, like we said, really, really great for Cassie, but he's also really great for Cassie's family, particularly Reggie, who he feels an almost mentorship role with Reggie in later seasons, right? Where anytime he wants like business advice or opinions about a business move, he goes to Chen. The way that Chen treats Cassie's family is just one of the many things that makes their relationship so great. They're not awkward around him and he's not awkward around them. And it doesn't feel like the relationship is forced at all, which would be so easy to do when you think of the stark differences between the two, who they are now, how they were raised. They're very different people, but they have this very intense connection that the writers and actors sell very, very well. It's very believable. I believe there's chemistry between them. I believe there's a lot of compassion and understanding between them. Like, it's just so well done.
You'll see like that relationship really deepen, and you'll see the Chen character really deepen when Uncle Julius dies. Cassie is sort of like grieving because she's lost, her best friend, and Chen is like really there for her, like in a way that's really, really beautiful. But we'll get to that. We'll be getting to that very soon. But season 2, some other things that happen in season 2 is Chuck starts going to therapy, which is really great and really funny. Cam falls in love with a girl named Allison, and the actress who plays Allison is the same actress that's playing a whole closeted lesbian on Batwoman.
Yeah. Allison is played by Megan Tandy. She is super pretty, and Uncle Julius makes a comment that I full on agree with. He says, she looks like a Disney princess. She really does. She plays an MRI technician and a nurse. When Cam meets her, he has an injury. He meets her. He's smitten with her. He's very, very, very persistent in getting a date with her. But, they end up hitting it off. They're in a steady relationship. And towards the end of season 1, he buys her a car, which she rejects. But the car sets off a chain of very unfortunate events. Allison and Cam's relationship is really cool too, because I don't feel like it's as effortless as Chen and Cassie's, and it definitely isn't as long as Missy and Reggie's, but you really feel like, just going in, like this is probably going to be something for the long haul. I really love Jesse T. Usher and Megan Tandy together. All the couples on this show really look comfortable together, which I value.
The Allison Cam relationship is an interesting one, because I think like it brings up the issue in terms of like, what do you do when like your partner is just like, I guess just the difficulties of dating somebody who does have like a big job and makes way more money than you. Like what are the boundaries in that in terms of keeping yourself and keeping them? Because Allison does reject the car because like she's like because she rightfully talks about like it's too much power, right? It says something like, it's like, and Cam doesn't see it that way, but Allison is right in a sense. You might feel like there's not strings attached to it, but later down the road, if we get into a fight and you bring up that you gave me this car, that's like that's like something that's gonna like poke, It's hard.
Right. We also navigate in their relationship just the trials and tribulations of dating someone who's famous. Everybody knows they're dating. People come up to them in public and have things to say. It even changes the way that her coworkers treat her, which we'll get into later. I think one of the bigger plots of season 2 is that when Cam and Allison get serious, he basically has to tell her, which is the decent, mature thing to do, that he may have contracted HPV from a brief sexual relationship he had with a sports reporter. So he may or may not have it. He still doesn't know because of some of these HPV strains are asymptomatic. But he tells her, and her response to his honesty is also really beautiful. But this is like one of their first major relationship hurdles. And then the car becomes like the next thing. And just the way they deal with these topics and the conversations they have, you're really rooting for Cam and Allison.
Definitely, definitely. So season 2 ends with Uncle Julius getting into a huge car accident because he's distracted while he's driving, and he dies.
Yeah. We knew where this was going. Like, we knew he died, but he was declared officially dead in that first episode of season 3, which is where I feel like season 3 is where the show started to tackle even more serious subjects. But seeing Uncle Julius go was like really a gut punch for me. I thought the character was great.
Yeah, the character definitely. Mike Epps is so funny, and he provides so much funniness, and the character's great. But but yeah, so it's hard, but everybody deals with it.
Right. So what do we think of season 2? Good, bad, or basic?
Season 2 is another solid good. I really like even though like I hate the sports reporter plot. I don't like it, which is why I did not say anything about it. That like aside, I think there's enough in terms of like Reggie and Missy and the whole Jupiter situation and Jupiter's manager, which is hilarious. Like all of that makes up for it. So it's a solid good for me.
Yeah, for me, you don't even have to ask. I think every single season of the show is good, not just the show overall, which I think is difficult to do, but the show pulls it off. So we jump into season 3. Julius is declared dead by the doctors, and everyone starts grieving in their own way. Cassie, she and Julius and their other sister were raised like, loosely Catholic. She becomes much more interested in exploring Catholicism, and we even see her at a children's confirmation class later in the season. M. Chuck, who had wanted to go back to college last season, basically tells her family about it. And, with some help from Jimmy Flaherty, she goes back to school because she doesn't want to have to live off her brother. Reggie is someone who doesn't really deal with difficult situations well, but, he's grieving in his own way too. And it shows in like kind of aggression that he carries with him for a little while, because Julius is the closest thing he had to like a father. His own father was very abusive, as we learn later. So everyone's grieving at this point, and Allison is feeling a lot of guilt over rejecting Cam's car, which is what led to the string of events where Julius was in that accident. And Cam could have easily blamed her too, but he doesn't, which is when I know for sure that they're going to make it.
Right. Yeah. So season 3, yeah. So Emma's right. Season 3, this show really starts going deeper, and I think has really found its sort of stride. I do think season 3 and season 4 are the better seasons, just in the sense of like they just go deeper with a lot of things, and there are a lot of things that happen, and it's in a lot of ideas and topics that are brought up that the show starts to think about. LeBron James makes a brief appearance in that poker game, by the way. In the previous season. So shout out if you guys want to, I don't know, watch LeBron James act or as himself, do that. One thing that's really beautiful about season 3 is we see like the Chen character like really take care of Cassie. Cassie's lost her best friend. And it's hitting her really, really hard. And Chen is really there for her in like a really great, really deep way. In terms of, he's not loosely Catholic like they are, but he does support her in the way that he knows how, and supports her in like his sort of like traditional culture of how they grieve the dead, which is cool.
Yeah, their relationship is actually strengthened, and grief is funny that way because it will destroy a weak relationship, but it can strengthen a strong one, and we really see that Cassie and Chen's relationship can go the distance because he steps up without being asked. He doesn't cross her personal boundaries, and he makes himself available to her. There's different manifestations of this grief as well. Like, she starts a podcast, things we think that you should think too, that she was going to start with Julius. The podcast is messy in concept, but actually very thought-provoking in execution.
Right.
She also takes an ancestry DNA test. She finds out that the bulk of her lineage is Nigerian, and she gets a very rude awakening when she realizes culture is more than just DNA.
Right. She's like, I don't know if I'm about this.
So let's talk about this photo shoot.
Missy sets up a photo shoot for Cam. She specifically asked for a dark-skinned model. The model couldn't make it for a reason that Missy wasn't aware of until the end of the episode. And the photographer Missy hired recast a light-skinned woman, much lighter than the original girl that Missy had chosen. Missy comes on set late because she had a dental appointment, sees the girl when the photo shoot is more than halfway finished, and, tells Reggie to basically pay this girl for the day, but get another model.
Right. And it sort of is like the model is played by Logan Browning, who is in Dear White People as Sam. So it's cool to see her. Yeah. And then there's a whole conversation that they have at the end of you just took away another opportunity. I think it's a cop out. I think the show cops out. It's not. She gets paid for the day. What else do you want? You were hired by the photographer.
Right. The model does say, it isn't just about the money, it's the exposure. This could have led to other jobs, but it's you are a light-skinned Black woman. You are what is touted in and out of the Black community as the archetype, as the acceptable Negro. Light-skinned women, whether they want to hear it or not, simply don't need more exposure. You're not underexposed. If anything, you're overexposed in Black media.
Yeah, it's just, like I said, I hate colorism episodes because they don't accomplish anything. And I feel like I think the show makes a cop out by ultimately her saying that line about, it would have been so great for me to get this national thing to expose you just took another Black woman's opportunity. I think I feel like that's a cop out for a lot of reasons. And I hate colorism episodes. They're dumb. I think you can't examine them. I don't think you can examine colorism properly in an episode. I think it either has to be a storyline in a season or one of the thematic elements in your series throughout the run of this series in order to be addressed properly. So I just bring it up because it's a thing that happened.
I agree. It can't be fully resolved in one. I do think it could be resolved in one episode. I just don't think anyone's actually managed to do it yet. I would be exhausted seeing the conversation in one season just because I feel like these conversations tend to become very, very circular. Many times when you have the conversation about colorism, lighter skinned people will, like this model did, make it a matter of personal taste rather than, an offset of white supremacy and a very ugly facet of the Black community and other communities of color. I will give the episode some credit because the model says a few things to Missy that were just out of line and out of order. I like that they didn't try to make her as this perfect victim and Missy as this great villain. She makes some comment about how Missy only has this job because she's fucking Cam's manager. Like Missy's not his actual wife. She's just some jump off, which was out of line and out of order. She makes another comment about how she would beat Missy's ass, except she can't go to jail right now because she has a kid. And when Missy tries to talk to her about how she didn't get the media representation that she needed when she was a girl growing up, and it was only women that looked like this model that she saw, and that there's still not representation for women who look like her. It goes in one ear and out the other, and the model's response is incredibly self-centered and doesn't even touch on this greater social issue that Missy just brought up. The episode left a lot to be desired, but I'll just say that it's probably the better handled colorism episode that any of these shows have even attempted.
Oh, there's like a... So then, like, later in season 3, there's this... There's like Cam gets really like sentimental about this abortion that like this girl that he hooked up in high school had. Like, she had an abortion because like he was hooking up with her and she got pregnant, and then like he gets like really like weird and sentimental about it.
Yeah, I thought the episode was interesting. So like it was his high school girlfriend. She was his first love. It was also Coach's daughter. Like, he gets high off some of Julius's weed and starts having a conversation with this aborted embryo, which was weird. I didn't want to see that. Like, that was very weird.
It felt very like Adult Swim. Like, I was watching something off of Adult Swim for a minute.
Yeah, that's the perfect way of describing it. That's a perfect way of describing it. It was just very, very weird. So this is a season where Chuck, who'd always had questions about her father, whom she doesn't know who her father is. They know who Cam's father is, but she never knew her father. Her mother never talks about him. In this season, she and Cam find out that their mother, Cassie, was gang raped when she was 15, and that one of those rapists is Chuck's father. This is powerful for a few reasons. It talks about this happening in the community, because I remember being a little girl and people would like laugh about girls who had a train ran on them, which is like literally girls being raped, right? And calling it rape, I thought was really powerful. And in regards to the Cassie character, she never wanted to talk about who Chuck's father was. And when she did talk about it, it was just with resolve. Like, this is something that happened and it was hurtful for me, but I'm moving past it. But once Chuck realized that her father was a rapist, it opened up a can of worms for her. Was she better off not knowing? Maybe. But this was obviously a very hard thing for Cassie to be walking around with. All of these. Chuck is 28 years old, that she's been walking around with this and knowing this truth about her daughter. That can't have been easy.
Right.
So the season closes when Chuck goes to see Pookie, a friend of Julius's, about, what happened with her conception and what happened with these boys who raped her mother. This is crazy for a lot of reasons, because Cam also goes to see his father at the end of this season. He goes to see his father, who's locked up in a penitentiary, and his father's played by Isaiah Washington. We learn that he's a man that Cassie kind of kept out of Cam's life because he just wasn't dependable. He was running around doing foolish, stupid, young things, and he's grown a lot, but he still has a lot of time left to serve.
Right. So season 3, good, bad, or basic?
Season 3 was very good.
Season 3 is very good. There's a lot of fun stuff that happens in season 3. There's like a whole sex doll thing that's really funny with like Chen and Cassie. That just, from this description, does not sound funny. It is funny. There is like a wedding episode where they go to a wedding back in Boston that is also very hilarious because Cam somehow becomes like the center of like this wedding. There's also something, we didn't quite talk about it, but another sort of big thing that happens in season 3 is Reggie's father calls Missy because he wants to get in touch with like Reggie, and that is yikes. That sort of opens up a can of worms for Reggie, and that's amazing to watch it and look at. So there's lots of good in season 3.
Yeah, season 3 was incredible. Let's jump into season 4, which will unfortunately be the last season of Survivor's Remorse. I should go on record and mention that season 4 is run in such a way that it's clear the series creators and writers thought that they were going to be renewed for a 5th season. So this is one of those shows where you're going to watch the entirety of the show. Don't expect closure.
Right. Which Mike O'Malley talks about a little bit. He was like in an interview with like The Undefeated. He talks about how they really did expect that they were going to get 5th because they were doing well and they were well reviewed, and Power had just come on to Starz. So they thought like they had the support of like that as well as some other stuff. And then they got the call that it was a no-go.
So we jump into season 4, and let's just jump into the Missy and Reggie's father thing, because Alex just brought it up. So first off, when we were talking about boundaries earlier, the first person that came to mind was actually Reggie's father. Listen, it is never okay to go around your kid to their partner, to try to recruit their partner as an ally so that you can reestablish a relationship with them. That's disrespectful of the person, their partner, their relationship. Like, it's 50 shades of disrespectful. He targets Missy because he thinks that she will be the one to like soften his son up or change Reggie's mind. He could contact Reggie directly because Reggie's Cam's manager. His phone number isn't exactly secret, right? But he goes to Missy, which was like, it's kind of underhanded.
Which Reggie is like very not pleased about, because he's like, if you ever contact my wife ever again, which is like actually one of the bigger sticking points for him, is that he specifically, Trent Vaughn, that's Reggie's father's name. One of his big things specifically was that Trent dragged Missy into it, which was like a big no-no for him. Among also just not wanting to reconnect with his father. But in the opener, they do have this big confrontation in a diner. It's interesting because for the first time, I think you see sort of the big fallout. Ron Rialcoli is like a really masterful actor. I think you also get like a real sense of how dangerous Reggie has the potential to be should he be pushed too far. He does get like very, very dark, which is just it's great to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt like there were breadcrumbs of like angry Reggie, like when Adina showed back up in his life and stuff, but we get the full explosion when he sees his father after all these years. It's clear that he's not over a lot of that hurt and a lot of that anger, and he's not really trying to make an effort to be, because he's not trying to make an effort to have his father in his life, right? Like, I'm not trying to forgive this dude. I'm not trying to be around this dude, so I actually don't have to get over anything. Trent Vaughn was physically abusive to Reggie and his mother, and he's an alcoholic. And I'm not saying that like alcoholism excuses physical abuse. I know there are plenty of alcoholics who are not physically abusive to their families, but in this case, his character happens to be both things. And the way that he tried to contact Reggie was underhanded. Reggie calls him on his shit. He calls him on all the shit he did when Reggie was growing up. And really looks like he just wants to put this man's head through a wall. They get jumped in the diner parking lot, or Reggie gets jumped and his dad like jumps in to help him. And I thought the show was setting us up for an eventual reconciliation, but what it does, I think, is much more honest and much more real. He stays with them for a while where he's recuperating, and then he kicks rocks, and Reggie doesn't even bother to find out where he is. He's like, good riddance, which I thought was real. Like, not all relationships can be mended.
Poor Missy tries to like not fix it, but like fix Reggie, and she doesn't realize there's nothing to be fixed. It's just one of those things that has to be broken, because there's definitely like an instinct in her to like fix it and to like be like, we're gonna heal and like do all this, and he's like, no, like just drop it. Which she doesn't really get. But it is how it has to be, unfortunately.
I thought Missy's reaction was so great, too. Like, like, it personally annoyed me as someone who has a tense relationship with my parents. But it's so real because very often when people know that you have a bad relationship with your parents, they will, like, if they have a good relationship with theirs, their instinct is to try to fix the situation. Especially in Missy's case, where she and Reggie are married, and he was talking about them having a child together, and she was very concerned about how his relationship with his father would affect his relationship with his own child, their future child. So her reactions were great, and they were loving and compassionate, but that's not what he needed.
And he even tells her that. He's like, I just need you to leave me alone. But listen, I get it. I get why she's concerned, because it is concerning. He's exhibiting behavior that she does not recognize from him. So she is like, what is happening? Which is, I think, is super fair. Like he's getting up out of bed in the middle of the night to like box. Like, she's just like, what is going on? Like, so I do empathize with her, and I feel for her in that way. But it is clear that it's one of those things that it needs to be where it's at.
Right. And the show does this with a couple of other things. Like, you just gotta let sleeping dogs lie sometimes, which I think is also a really, like, huge sigh of relief from your typical comedy or your typical drama or your typical sitcom, where everything has to be resolved eventually. Sometimes shit doesn't get resolved, and that's okay.
Also, season 4, this is the season where Cassie meets Chen's parents.
Yes, it is.
Which is really fun.
It is fun. It definitely deals with a lot of the anti-Blackness in the Asian community. Another thing that needed maybe more than one episode, but I felt like, unlike the colorism episode, it wasn't as much of a cop-out, because it definitely showed this to be, largely an issue that's ingrained in a lot of Asian cultures and mindsets. But by the end of the episode, Chen's family realizes, like, Cassie's better qualities, that the fact that he's not getting any younger and he's found love, and it squashes. So that was nice to see. And Chen's kind of like protectiveness of Cassie during interactions with his parents was also really great to see.
Cam proposes to Allison.
That was great, and that ring was big. But I want to talk about, like, an earlier point I made, and how, like, dating a celebrity, people treat you different. Like, Cam's not just rich, he's famous, and people make all kinds of, like, assumptions about the ring. Like, oh, is that an apology ring, girl? Did he cheat on you? Is he beating your ass, girl? Is that why he gave you that ring? Like, the idea that, like, she's not pregnant and he just proposed to her out of love is their very last guess, which is crazy.
Right. It's crazy.
She gets passed over for a promotion as well at work.
Right. Yeah. So season 4 brings, like, I think more of, like, that struggle that we're talking about, and that she's getting passed over for a promotion. And I think Allison herself brings it up in that, like, when she's trying to, like, commiserate about this thing being passed over for this promotion, Cam sort of, like, he's trying to be empathetic, but at the same time, he's just sort of like, whatever, because I have so much money anyway. And I think his mindset is that, like, because, like, you're with me, like, you have so much money anyway, like, why do you care? It just makes for more issues and struggle between them.
Right. And I mean, even with this promotion, it's not just her thinking she was passed over. She's outright told that she is passed over by someone less qualified, because her boss or her immediate superior assumes that she's going to want to stop working eventually anyway and just be Mrs. Cam Calloway, which is beyond sexist, right?
Right. That's like, that's interesting that you have all these thoughts. Why? I don't know, but okay, that's fine. Yeah, it's like, that's a really sexist thing to assume. It's gross on a whole lot. It's gross on a bunch of levels. The fact that he would assume that she's gonna be married, so, like, all of her sort of ambition is just finished.
Right. which is wild because this is a person from our very first interaction with Allison. We know that she's not a social climber. She's not trying to be a basketball wife, really. And she loves her job and takes it very, very seriously. The idea that a person's entire personality will change when they marry someone is deeply problematic, but that's what it was. And, in this season, in the tail end, we were dealing with issues like Cam possibly getting signed to another team, and would Allison want to move with him or not? And, the discussions that they haven't had that they need to have.
Right. So something that Mike O'Malley talks about in terms of like the series, about like a larger sort of theme of the series, is that, it's called Survivor's Remorse for the sake of like, obviously the thing that's in front of your face, which is that Cam has like been able to get his family out of this situation in terms of finances and poverty, like, and they're all rich. But he says there's like a sort of deeper thing in terms of like each character is actually having their own bout of like survivor's remorse in an area of their life. So with Cassie, it is like having survivor's remorse in terms of having this traumatic thing happen to her and she's fine. For M. Chuck, it's about sort of surviving Cassie in terms of her childhood, and also in terms of her childhood, and also just everything. For Reggie, it's his father. So everyone's going through this thing, and it just sort of, so I guess it's hard, and you empathize with all the characters because you understand like why M. Chuck is like sort of coming to that place because of this thing, and she violates her mom's trust, and there are no easy answers, there are no good or bad actors, and that's what makes the show really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's so well done. And Chen, being Chen, the first thing he says, like once he, like almost immediately, is "I'm here for you," which I thought was so beautiful because Cassie's kind of like turning her head, looking at him with like dread when M. Chuck drops this damn bomb. But Chen is a solid guy. He's a good guy. They're gonna go the distance too. But at the end of the season, like, Cassie does finally confront M. Chuck when she finds a paper that she wrote for her writing class or her English class talking about her mother's rape. And she's like, yo, you really got to stop talking about this. You got to stop talking about my trauma, which, it plays a role in M. Chuck's own personal trauma as well. But Cassie doesn't want to be exposed like that. At this point, they know that who your brother is, and they'll know the mother that you're talking about, and she doesn't want strangers feeling sorry for her when the show makes it clear that she's in a point in her life finally when she's started to move past that trauma, and that M. Chuck, processing it now is only making Cassie relive some of the trauma.
Right. Season 4, I think the last episode is Answers and Questions.
Two major things happen. The Cassie confronting M. Chuck that I just talked about, and then Cam and Reggie's real estate deal.
Oh, yes. This real estate deal. Yes. So Reggie ultimately cuts Cam out of this real estate deal, I think, in the end.
No, Cam rejected it. He said he wasn't going to do it, and he didn't want Reggie to do it either. But Missy's like, let's do it without him because I already just begged my father for my trust fund.
Right. So they do it anyway. Effectively cutting Cam out, and that's how it ends. So once again, there's this interview with The Undefeated where Michael O'Malley talks about like the direction he would have taken the series in, because like he had already been sort of plotting out, because he was a showrunner, and he was already sort of working out what was going to happen. And it's very bittersweet, because Reggie and like Missy were going to get pregnant, and for Cassie and Chen, he was going to like continue to explore this idea of like what happens if like Cassie raises sort of children under like in like this in like her life now that like she's in a super healthy environment, and like what sort of like resentment does that like feed into her like kids currently, in terms of like this one child having everything that they didn't, and all these sort of interesting ideas that he had like to explore, and we'll never get to them. It's sad.
I would have really liked to see that. I really would have liked to see that. We'll never know, but I feel like there were a lot of strings left untied, a lot of loose threads. I enjoyed the show for as long as you know it lasted. I only watched it for the first time when Alex and I discussed doing this lights, camera, action season, and honestly, it's like top tier. I would watch this again, like just for recreational purposes.
Yeah. So once again, I didn't particularly do like a favorite episodes, because the series is short. It's 4 seasons, 30-minute episodes, 10 episodes each season, with the last one being also 10 episodes. I think it's a really short watch. I think you need to go out and watch it. Go out and watch.
It's only 36 episodes. You're fine.
You're fine. It's one of the less sort of like intensive ones, and I think it's good, and everyone should take a look at it.
I think the beauty of this show for me is that how it dealt with a lot of intense social, intercommunal, and intra-community issues without making me feel weighed down, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't feel like this heavy load after each episode. Like, whew, I just ran a marathon. That was a really intense conversation. Like, so you could roll from one episode to the next really easily. I think I binge watched this show over the course of 2 or 3 days, and it was no big deal. Season 4 was excellent, just like all the other seasons that preceded it. What about you, Alex? Was it good, bad, or basic?
It was good. This is an excellent show. I love this. This is a good show. I like this show. Like I said, I'm not a fan of the shows that are super talky, but that style of like writing. But I think this show is exceptional. I think the performances are very exceptional. This is a really strong cast, and I think it's also cool for stuff that I stated in the beginning. This is one of LeBron James's like first projects from his production company, and also LeBron James was very involved in this show. That's something else that Mike O'Malley talks about. LeBron like would visit set. LeBron had lots of notes about storylines. LeBron had lots of thoughts about storylines. He had lots of thoughts about the characters. So knowing that he had that so for me, like, that's really interesting, knowing that he, in terms of like his level of involvement, knowing that there was so much that came from him, for just as a creator and someone who's like a nerd about this stuff. That's super interesting to me, to watch the show and think of it from that vantage point as well. Yeah. And then also, it's just like a really good show. And there you have it, folks. This is everything that we think made Survivor's Remorse good, bad, basic, and surprisingly insightful. If you'd like to watch or relive this series, Survivor's Remorse is currently streaming over at Starz.com. On Hulu, you can get it on Hulu with the Starz add-on, as well as on Amazon Prime. Leave your comments below and let us know what you thought of this series. If you're a patron on our top 2 tiers, be sure to check out GBB's Survivor's Remorse Spotify playlist. If you've enjoyed this episode, leave us a review on your preferred podcast streaming platform and share it with your friends.
Tune in next week when Alex and I will be discussing the CTV's teen dramedy Instant Star. The series can be watched in its entirety on the Instant Star YouTube channel, and our episode goes live next Thursday. In the meantime, our top-tier patrons can tune in for another movie review, where we'll be discussing the holiday classic The Preacher's Wife. If you'd like to watch or relive the film, The Preacher's Wife is currently streaming on Hulu with the live TV add-on.
Em and I will be releasing a holiday music video retrospective stacked with our favorite holiday-themed videos next week on Christmas Day. Though MVRs are usually a bonus for top-tier patrons only, this one will be available for all our patrons as a special holiday gift from us to you. So be sure to tune in for this auditory stocking stuffer.
We want to wish a happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas to those whom celebrate, and a very joyous and peaceful holiday season to all. Follow The Good, the Bad, the Basic on all major podcast platforms to listen to our regular weekly episodes on the go. If you love this sort of content and want more, become a show producer and patron on Patreon. You can find us at patreon.com/goodbadbasic. Your support allows us to keep bringing you our regular weekly episodes, as well as exclusive bonus material.
Be sure to follow us at Good Bad Basic Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, follow our SoundCloud page, The Good, the Bad, the Basic, where all of our social media links are listed. Until next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.